just before we start, I want a number of you to consider joining our kind of like steering group and our planning for these initiatives, because we do have some plans and we need all you brainiacs with your experience and your contacts and your creativity to help us move forward. We've done a lot with nothing, and we probably do continue to do a lot with nothing, but we want to do a lot. So it could be, the Betty Joneses of the world are going to say, Jack and Michelle and all you guys, here's something that I think we might be able to do, or this is the perfect person for you to contact, and you can charm them on our behalf. Alex, welcome. And thank you so much for joining us. But it's the Betty Joneses of the world that make things happen. Okay. As we move forward, I think that I'm going to turn it over for Emily to continue to let people in. Is that okay, Emily?
Yep.
Thank you. So I'm going to start. We're now at 2:03. Welcome to everybody who's on the call. We'll have more of them come along. As they come along, we'll be letting them into our room. I'm Jack Kupferman, president of Great Panthers NYC. And as many of you know, we've been doing this series of webinars on Transformation Tuesdays. We call them Transformation Tuesdays, originated and thought out by Michelle Arnaud, our vice president. And they focus on unexplored issues of long-term care and nursing home transformation. It is not a reach to say that the entire system is a piece of crap. And that a head-to-toe overhaul is required. Whether or not we're going to get that head-to-toe overhaul is hard to imagine, but we as advocates, all of us on this call, and all of us who are interested need to make that effort. And this, as part of our effort, is education. Bringing the voice of people together so that you understand what some of these important issues are and get a sense of the trauma that's involved for families, for staff, and for residents. It continues to be stunning and staggering. The COVID illness, the COVID deaths in long-term care facilities. And even with Omicron, we have this happening all over again. We thought that we had been not so much behind it, but behind it with vaccinations. But it's painful. I mean, many of us know people in long-term care facilities if we haven't already been there ourselves. And just hearing their cries for help because they're not getting the attention they need, because the workforce is not even able to show up because of their own COVID and their own health issues. So what we're looking at here is the nursing home workforce and the long-term care workforce's change in the public interest. Why is it important that we address these issues for the good of everyone? Great Panthers has been on the forefront of this more recently, and you may have probably seen our documentary, Honoring Nursing Home Lives Lost, the COVID tragedy. And this is the Transformation Tuesdays has been an ongoing project. Every month we have these webinars that are quite well received. And we want to make all of you regular viewers. And we want to make an effort to bring all of us to a call to action for whatever those concerns may be. As I said, we're looking forward to having you join us in these various efforts and the projects that we have in mind, and to let you help us plan for these things. We have a great panel from a number of diverse views and diverse perspectives on the issue of the nursing home workforce. We have our first person up. I'm going to do the intros at the beginning, including with the bios, and plus with my own personal comments. The first one is going to be Allison Cook. Allison and I go way back, and she is, I'll give you her bio. Allison is the founder of Better Aging and Policy Consulting. Her expertise includes health policy, workforce development, policy research, and advocacy. She's the chief strategist at Emerging Aging NYC, a volunteer-run networking group for emerging professionals in the field of aging. Allison previously worked at PHI as the state policy manager and at the Medicare Rights Center as an education associate. Her career in aging was cemented during her experience as the home health aide while in college. Allison has her master's degree in public health from Brown University. She's the first, and then next we have Ilana Berger. Ilana, our relationship doesn't go back quite as far, but I'm like, every time that I see Ilana, it's like, this is a really good human being who is eager and a great style. Ilana is the New York director of Hand in Hand, the Domestic Employers Network, a sister organization to the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and co-director of the New York Caring Majority. She's been organizing since 1996 in community-based organizations in New York and throughout the country, including 10 years as executive director of Families United for Racial and Economic Equality in Brooklyn. After leaving that organization, Ilana was co-director of the New York Bottom Line, a campaign uniting 4 national organizing networks, fighting for bank accountability and a just, equitable economy. Ilana has consulted for national and local organizations, including the Ford Foundation, Caring Across Generations, National Domestic Workers Alliance, and many other entities. She is passionate, and she is spearheading the Fair Pay Initiative with regard to paid home care workers. And she's going to have a lot of fascinating views and information for us. And thirdly is Rick Gamache. Rick has served elders in various executive capacities, including hospitals, hospice, home health, rehabilitation, and all types of congregate long-term care. He's the chief executive officer for Aldersbridge Communities, a not-for-profit provider of assisted living and skilled nursing for low-income individuals in Rhode Island. He also teaches long-term care in the Healthcare Administration program at Rhode Island College. Rick is the former board president for the Eden Alternative, the world's largest culture change organization, focusing on the well-being of elders and based in New York. He's current board member for Leading Age Rhode Island and serves on the Rhode Island Quality Institute Board. For his innovation and visionary leadership, Rick was chosen as the National Distinguished Administrator in 2009 by the American College of Healthcare Administrators. So as you can tell, we have quite a broad range of perspectives. We have the advocacy, we have the policy, and we have the reality. So I'm looking forward to everybody's views, and I'd like to turn this over to Allison for your anticipated presentation.
Thanks, Jack. I am going to share my screen, so hopefully the technology cooperates. Okay, you should all see my presentation right now. Here we go. So I won't introduce myself since Jack just did a great job. At the end of my presentation, I'll have my contact information if anyone wants to share. I will be talking about the nursing home workforce today. First, I'll talk a little bit about who are nursing home workers and who do I mean when I say nursing home workers. I'll do a couple of recent policy changes in New York and a few next steps. So, who are New York's home care workers? Excuse me, nursing home workers. When I say nursing home workers, I'm specifically, and I apologize, you'll probably hear my dog a couple times while I'm speaking. When I say nursing home workers, I'm specifically referring to those workers who provide the majority of hands-on care in the nursing home setting. So usually they're referred to as nursing assistants, certified nursing assistants, and they are a part of a bigger category of workers called direct care workers. And that includes nursing home workers, as well as home care workers, direct support professionals, and similar occupations. Now, there are similarities across these occupations, but of course, there's unique challenges and opportunities presented by the settings they work within. So my presentation today will focus on nursing home workers and will focus on New York. But if you would like more information about direct care workers in general or home care workers specifically, or on a specific state, feel free to reach out. And again, you'll have my contact information at the end of this. So to avoid me just talking at you the whole time, we're going to play a little quick game. I'm going to ask you to put your answers in the chat. It's called higher or lower. And all I'm going to ask you to do is write in the chat if you think the actual number is higher or lower than what's on the slide. So New York has 70,000 nursing assistants. Is the actual number higher or lower? I'll give you just a moment to type that in. And of course, I cannot, let's see. Yeah, I cannot see the chat. So I can't, oh, here we go. Let me pull it up. Let's see, I'm seeing a bunch of higher, a couple lower. So the answer is higher. So we have in New York over 81,000 nursing assistants. Now, if you want to talk about the whole direct care workforce, we're over, with that number is quite a bit larger, almost 6 times larger. So, but when we focus specifically on that nursing home setting, nursing assistants, over 81,000. And that means that this workforce is a key economic driver in our state, especially when you consider the home care workers along with them. Next one. New York's nursing home workers earn an average of $32,000 per year. Let's see, what do you think? Higher or lower? Lower. I didn't trick anyone here. The real answer is lower. For a whole year of working, they earn an average of $27,800. To M with no children is 39,000, just about 39,000. So that brings us to our last, higher or lower. About 1 in 4 nursing home workers relies on public assistance to make ends meet. Now, this one might not be too challenging since I a hint in the previous slide. Okay, yes, exactly, higher. So for nursing home workers, about 1 in 3. Now, this is really concerning because Medicaid, and to some extent Medicare, so public funding sources, are the primary payer for long-term care. And that means we are allowing our system to pay its workers so little that then they have to rely upon public benefits themselves, which in my opinion is unacceptable. So what do these numbers mean? And Jack, feel free to just let me know if I'm running low on time, but I'm trying to keep it within my allotted time. So this means this workforce, it's a workforce largely comprised of women, largely comprised of women of color, and especially in New York, immigrants. I already made that first bullet point, but overall it means that we do not give the respect or the compensation to these workers that reflects the essential nature of the work they do. They're going in and day out and providing that hands-on care that makes a difference in quality of care and quality of life for residents of nursing homes. And unsurprisingly, there's high turnover. There was high turnover before COVID, and COVID has made everything, all of the challenges that we see in our system, worse. So I'm going to talk about a couple of recent policy changes in New York. I will preface it by saying that while there have been some changes and there's been a lot of attention on nursing homes, so far I wouldn't say I've seen anything that's truly going to be that create deep transformative change. In the previous legislative session, there were 2 key bills, and I'm focusing on laws and proposals that specifically focus on the workforce. So one of them requires a direct care ratio. So each resident must receive at least 3.5 hours of direct care per day. 2.2 of that has to be from a nursing assistant. And the statewide average was already 3.4 hours per day. So that means average means there's some that fell below that. So it will raise up that bottom line. And the way that impacts workers is that hopefully, we will see, but hopefully if a nursing home can attract enough workers, then those workers won't be so overwhelmed caring for so many residents at once. And then the second one is a nursing home spending requirement that at least 40% of a nursing home's revenue must be spent on direct care staffing. Now, I don't have the exact number, but one estimate of the nonprofit nursing homes only in New York said about 2/3 of them already spend at least 40%. Nonprofits tend to spend a little bit more on their staff than for-profits do, but that is a generalization. So in all, these 2 are getting us closer to a system that hopefully values workers in a way that reflects their contributions. There's also, I'll say this whole second piece, were proposals by Governor Hochul in her State of the State that was earlier this month. Earlier today, she released a summary of what her executive budget will look like. I haven't yet seen, unless it happened within the past hour, I haven't yet seen the actual bill that goes into the details. So some of this will be updated, but the overarching proposals remain the same. One, she proposes to establish a master plan on aging. Now, this is really exciting, and she's going to do it through an executive order, so it doesn't need to go through the legislature. It's exciting because we can utilize this opportunity to take a look at our whole long-term care system and figure out what the right balance of community-based services, facility-based services, how we attract and retain workers, how we ensure that people can stay in their homes if they want to, all of these pieces, how we finance our system. And I think that's a real, well, I'll get back to that in a moment. And then there are a couple of other proposals. One is expanding the greenhouse model, which is another one of those culture change models that tries to make a nursing home more of a home and less like a facility. Then there's investing in worker recruitment and retention bonuses and wages. I am hesitating here because it doesn't appear that there's actually an investment in wages for direct care workers, only in the recruitment and retention bonuses. Housing alternatives, helping people stay in their homes, and strengthening the long-term care ombudsman program, which is really important because it helps support residents in understanding and enforcing their rights. All of this is just a little quick policy update. I won't get too much more into the details because I know these can make some people's eyes glaze over. But if you have more questions, feel free to put them in the chat or reach out to me directly after. And a couple of next steps, and I'm looking forward to really having a discussion with panelists and other panelists and answering any questions folks have. But a couple of next steps that you guys can take, that anyone can take. First is the master plan on aging. There hopefully will be opportunity for the public, for anyone to contribute to submit what they feel is important to include in this master plan. You can stay up to date. I'm going to put this in the chat in a moment, but you can stay up to date by signing up. The Healthcare Foundation of Western and Central New York is keeping close track of updates for the master plan on aging. And then I think the other piece is we don't want a small change like those bills that already passed to be the only change that comes out of COVID. We have seen that there needs to be that more transformative change. So we don't want to let policymakers off the hook and say, okay, we did something, we're done. And there are ways to ensure that the needs of direct care workers, including nursing home workers, remain in the news and on the top of policymakers' minds. You can write an op-ed, you can call your legislators, and you can also, just a really simple one that I feel is the lowest lift, is share your experience. Have you ever interacted with a home care worker, a nursing home worker, and really seen, I have a million stories I can talk about the workers who cared for my loved ones, the workers I've seen in the field every day and their commitment. And I think it counteracts some of those negative stereotypes we have that as a society, that this is unskilled work, which is not true, that this work is not valuable and shouldn't be compensated at more than a minimum wage. So I'll stop talking there. I'll let some other folks talk and feel free to share your questions in the chat. I have my contact information here. I'll also put that in the chat. And I believe that these slides will be shared after today's call.
Thank you so much. That was actually a great presentation and kind of a concrete overview of what some of the issues are. And clearly, this is not stuff that the general public is aware of. So thank you for the way that you presented it and for your call to action and informing us about the numbers. They're kind of scary. And important for all of us to know about. While we're at it, just before we start with Ilana, I wanted to welcome Sabrina from Councilmember Lewis's office. Thank you so much for being on this call and for joining the webinar. We're looking forward to working with you soon so that we can accomplish on behalf of not only of the workers, but the residents, to assure the rights of residents and the improvement of the quality of life for long-term care recipients and staff and families. So with that, I'd like to move on to Ilana Berger for her presentation on fair pay and workforce and nursing and how that ties into the nursing home workforce. Ilana, you're up.
Hello there. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very used to doing things right after Allison, but she usually gives this whole thing on the home care workforce, and so then it just sets me right up. But yeah, I really appreciate being here. Really appreciate what all of you are doing. And yeah, I also do not need to say that was quite a intro. Thank you, Jack. And I think I just want to start though by following up on something Allison said about sharing our stories. And remembering there are so many scary numbers in this. There's in this whole, realm, there's on one side a lot of hard stuff happening. And then on the other side, there is this whole notion of sort of care work and how we look after each other. And particularly in this moment of just evil individualism and sort of people out for themselves, there's something very uplifting about getting to work in this sector where we talk about interdependence and how we care for each other. And so it is great to remember stories, to share our stories. And it is amazing how many people in elected office and in other places also have care stories and also can relate to this issue from a really personal place. And so it's actually, we often start our meetings with asking people to share their care stories because you never know who has a really intense connection to this issue. So I will just briefly say that my grandmother lived to 108. She passed away in April of 2020 and was amazing. And her choice was to stay home, and she was able to do so even after having a stroke because she had phenomenal home care workers who made the last 4 years of her life really high quality. I think the other thing I want to say really quickly, so I don't any lower expectations from the start, I'm really working on home care. And so the way that we see the connection to nursing homes is it's just part of a continuum of long-term care, and that we believe very strongly at New York Caring Majority that all of us should have the right to choose where we live and age, and that we have the support we need to do so. So I'm not going to really get into much about nursing homes other than to talk about, home care as, for many people, an alternative to going into congregate care settings. But something that right now it's very challenging for people to be able to do so because of a major workforce shortage and other issues that, like the nursing home industry, there's a sort of a need for an industry transformation. So I hope that's okay. I hope nobody is deeply disappointed. I will have some fun action updates for you though. So yeah, again, my name's Ilana. My job is with Hand in Hand, the Domestic Employers Network, which works closely with the National Domestic Workers Alliance, but I'm mostly here to talk about the work with New York Caring Majority. I do come out of the domestic worker movement though, and see a real connection when we talk about all of this workforce, that particularly in the domestic workforce side, the home workforce side, workers, it's connected to a deep legacy of inequity and injustice and slavery in this country. And one of the reasons that we find that home care workers anyway are paid so low is because back in the 30s, when our country passed its foundational labor laws, farm workers and domestic workers were left out of some basic labor protections because they were predominantly Black workers. And in a nod to the Southern congressional delegation, were left out of some foundational labor protections that bring us to today. And today, Allison, I think, brought up some of these points, so I'm just going to add a little bit, but we do know that we are in a big aging boom. The population is getting older, people are living longer, and many, many people, the vast majority of people, do choose to live and age in our own communities. And so in New York, between this year and 2040, the state of New York is supposed to grow about 3%, but the 65 and over population will grow by 25%, and the number of adults over 85 will grow by 75%, which some people call a crisis. We could also look at it as a really exciting opportunity to have vibrant intergenerational communities. And we are, it's unclear in terms of, we already have a decent sized population in the state who of all ages, people who are living with disabilities, and that with long-term COVID, the percentage of disabled folks in the state may rise. So even before COVID, we were really encountering a big workforce crisis in home care. It's gotten worse with COVID. And those numbers that Allison gave about workforce. So home care workers have it's a big number. And these are numbers from PHI, but between 2018 and 2028, there's going to be over 800,000 job openings in home care, just in New York State. And that's taking into account the demographic growth and the need for workers with the very high turnover. Mercer, another institution, projects that there's going to be, we currently have a workforce shortage in New York in home care of about 25,000, and that it's going to grow to 80,000 by 2025. And a huge part of this, as very similar, the numbers are even lower in home care. Again, a workforce that is vast majority women of color, and women who are averaging about $22,000 a year, almost 60% relying on public assistance. And in New York City, home care workers' minimum wage is $15 an hour. Long Island and Westchester just went up to $15. And last year, the rest of the state was $12.50. It's now gone up to $13.20 an hour. But the fast food minimum wage went up to $15 statewide. So in many parts of the state, home care workers are still earning less than fast food workers. And I think this is a time for me to stop talking for a second and just try to illustrate what's happening and show you a very brief PSA that we are releasing publicly tomorrow. So you all are getting to see this before it is public. And it's
world premiere.
This is a world premiere. It's going to be part of our response to the governor's budget that came out today. It's only 2.5 minutes, and then I will quickly run through a little bit more on our campaign. Although it always takes me a minute to get my screen shared. So
This is exciting.
Here we go. Share screen. I have to make sure I'm sharing the sound, which is the thing I always mess up. There we go. Okay. And don't judge me for how many tabs I have open. Oh, wait, but I can't do that yet. All right. I swear we're getting there.
Sometimes I feel angry.
Okay. Here we go. Trying again.
Sometimes I feel angry.
See you, we don't get the visual.
And no, that's all my fault. I didn't do it right. Here we go. Now it should work.
You know, I worked all my life and now I can't even get help. That's obviously. I've worked since I was 13 years old. I'm 81.
I'm so sorry.
I can't do what I
I didn't. Oh, hold on.
I have fell a number of times and hurt myself. So I'm not supposed to be in a tub without somebody being in there. So I need the aid for that. When I start cooking, I go sit down. And a lot of times I just fall asleep. I never thought I'd be in this condition. But yeah. And I have a big family, but they all work. They all got their families. They can't help me. All the agencies saying they're short. I suppose I have 5 days. I've had 1 day, I've had 2 days, but no more than that for a long time. Living by yourself, it's lonely. And so just having that face of somebody to talk to and laugh, it makes a difference. A lot of seniors don't have anybody. Most of your home care people are women. And there are also many of them are women with children. You know, and they gotta eat. But these women are working and sweating and lifting. So at least give them a good salary to come in and be able to go through all of that. And if you give somebody a good salary, they'll come to work.
We will not go back to normal. We will not go back to normal.
Home care workers help me so much, and I want to help them by being here today.
And taking out your pots and pans is one thing, but the best way to demonstrate our love and commitment to all that you do is to show you some money, address income inequality and the feminization of poverty with the stroke of a pen.
Today in Union Square, advocates rallied for home care workers, who on average make about $12.50 an hour. In New York, 91% are female, 77% people of color, and 57% of them are on some kind of public assistance. For people like Loretta Copeland, the proposal is a no-brainer.
I want a normal life. I want to be able to enjoy what time I have left.
Wow.
Okay. So world
Wow.
premiere right here, right now. So people are asking, can you get a link? You can later because you have to, we can't release it publicly yet. So we're gonna actually, at the end of this, I'll share where you can sign up and we'll send out the toolkit. We're asking people to share it tomorrow. But I think that does, in some ways, a better job of getting too deep into the campaign. And I want to make sure we get to the other stuff. But I do briefly want to talk about New York Carrying Majority and our Fair Pay for Home Care campaign. So given the crisis in the home care workforce shortage and the need for so many people to access long-term care services, we formed New York Carrying Majority about 5 years ago and essentially said, we're in a moment where we're going to need to invest billions of dollars in a workforce that's mostly women and women of color, supporting older adults and disabled people. Wow, that's an easy job to do. So we said, in order to win an ambitious set of things, we need to bring all of the stakeholders together. And so we really worked hard to make sure we are including organizations representing disabled people, older adults, workers, and family caregivers. We work on a number of things, including supporting the fight to pass the New York Health Act, which would include long-term care from day one, and would be that would truly transform the health and long-term care sector in New York. But currently, given the real crisis, again, of this home care workforce, together, we really decided that the thing we needed to focus on, in addition to New York Health Act, is raising home care worker wages. And so we wrote legislation called Fair Pay for Home Care, which you saw there in the film, which essentially says home care is not a minimum wage job. It should not, or it's not minimum wage work. It absolutely should not be a minimum wage job, and essentially ties home care, says that home care worker wages should be 150% of minimum wage. I didn't just shut you off, did I? No. Okay.
No.
Sorry, I just lost myself for a second trying to find my little thing. So the campaign introduced legislation last year, have been working very hard. We have amazing sponsors. We have Senator Rachel May in the Senate and Assembly Member Dick Gottfried, and we really want to win this for him before he retires, or with him. And we, so again, it's 150% of minimum wage across the state. So it would be $22.50 an hour for home care workers. And it's been a really, we've built a grassroots coalition again of folks around the state. We started really grassroots and been able to build a tremendous amount of momentum. So we have just about 80, we just hit the majority, 80 sign-ons in the Assembly and 35 in the Senate. We have bipartisan support in both chambers, which is fascinating. We have some very diehard Republican, even Trumpy supporters, which is, again, a testament to the fact that this is a universal issue. In this last few months, we brought on some real amazing support from the New York Association on Aging, which is the association of all of the county offices for aging. We've had some amazing actions from them. 44 county offices for the aging signed a letter to Governor Hochul calling on her to enact fair pay for home care, which is they're essentially asking their boss to do this, which is pretty amazing. We also, AARP is now fully on board, as well as we've been partnering with SEIU 1199. So we've really brought in some of the heavy hitters in this sector, and we are going to do, and I guess on top of that, though, it is truly the grassroots folks around the state who are just absolutely making this campaign what it is. We have people doing actions and meeting with legislators all over the state. There are a million ways for people to plug in. And so basically our job now, Governor Hochul just released her budget. There is some talk about bonuses in the budget for home care workers, which is not what we want. People don't need bonuses. They need permanent wage increases. In fact, when you're at this low wage, sometimes a bonus can actually put you over the limit to access certain benefits. And then you are stuck because then you go back to where you were after, once the bonus is done. So we're going to continue to fight the executive level, but most importantly, work in partnership with our friends in the legislature to try to get this in both one house budgets in the Assembly and the Senate. We're going at, we want 150% of minimum wage. We are going at 150% to win this thing. There's too many people around the state who need this. There are people sleeping for 3 weeks in their wheelchairs because they can't find aids. There's people who are falling and getting hurt. And we owe it to everybody who's put their life into this campaign to win. So yeah, I'm just going to put in the chat and the ways to plug in. I'm putting in a sort of our petition. And if you sign it here, you'll get in the loop and you'll get that video we just shared. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Ilana. This was invigorating and informative and all the rest of that stuff, even though if you have a basic understanding of what the issues may be, what you've done is that you've put meat on the bones. And just thank you so much for this beautiful opportunity to enlighten us. We're going to be moving over to Rick in just a moment, but I wanted to do a call out to Petula Hanley from Brooklyn Assembly member Stephanie Zimmerman's office. And we're grateful that you're here so that you can have the opportunity to listen in and to be educated on these really critical issues for the state of New York. We're really grateful that you're here. So Rick, if you would be so kind, we're looking forward to your perspective because I know that you have a lot to say of importance on these issues.
Thank you very much, Jack. And thank you, Ilana and Allison, and thank you everyone for being here today. I would like to share a recipe with you. And it's what is being served up currently in skilled nursing facilities across the country. My talk is really going to be about the Cna workforce. And this recipe that I'm going to share is a recipe for disaster. As you've heard from Allison and Ilana, Cna jobs are paid less than the poverty level. Incredible. There's practically zero opportunity for advancement. You have to work weekends, you work holidays. If someone who's replacing you on the next shift doesn't show up, you have to stay at work. These are not desirable jobs. This is difficult work. It's physically demanding. It's emotionally exhausting. And there's a nationwide staff shortage, which shouldn't surprise us, really. The staff shortage predates COVID. And COVID, layered on top of all of what I've just told you, has made these jobs more dangerous and in many cases deadly. Over 2,000 nursing home employees have died, along with 142,000 elders who have died of COVID in nursing homes. And, I often found myself wondering, what does it say about us as a society when essential staff members, the people that have to come to work during a pandemic, are living below the poverty line? I mean, what does that say about us? This epidemic has exposed everything that's broken about the long-term supports and systems that we have in place in this country. And there's never been a better time to fix it than now. Nursing homes are closing in on 145,000 deaths, not including the deaths from loneliness and the deaths from despair that are not even in that number. Why has it been that nursing homes have had so much more death than, say, hospitals or assisted living in COVID? Well, there are two reasons. First of all, these buildings, this environment was never built to mitigate the spread of infectious disease. These buildings are built based on regulations that came out from for hospitals from the Joint Commission in 1965 that were retrofitted into nursing homes in the early 70s. They have shared bedrooms, shared bathrooms. There's a shower at the end of the hall, like a college dorm. Imagine you're 85 years old, you have to live like you're a college freshman. It's awful. Second reason is that the staff, because they're such low wages, have to work more than one job. So they're spreading, they're going from place to place, and this is how COVID spread. Add on top of this a heaping spoonful of ageism, because let's face it, our society doesn't value elders, and it doesn't value people who care for elders. And then add in racism, because as you've heard previous panelists say, many of these workers are immigrants and people of color. And then add in sexism, because 85% of this workforce is female. And if there's ever been a population whose needs can and have been ignored by our government, by our society, it's this group. I can't think of another group that is at sort of the intersection of racism, sexism, and ageism other than long-term care. And where these isms exist, systemic problems exist. So ageism, racism, and sexism impact on our public policies. They've given us a dysfunctional regulatory system that oversees long-term care that fails to weed out chronic bad actors in the system, that treats all providers as if they're a poor performer. It's punitive rather than collaborative. It discourages innovation. Right now, there are more regulations on nursing homes than there are for nuclear power, and it still hasn't worked. How many more regulations will it take? It doesn't work. And then we have a disconnected reimbursement system that Allison went into a little bit right at the beginning, that impoverishes older adults who need long-term care. 2/3 of them end up on Medicaid, and Medicaid pays about 70 to 80% of the total costs of care. That gap is subsidized by private pay and by Medicare. For me, here in Rhode Island, and it's not much different in New York, we're paid $240 a day on average by Medicaid to take care of someone in our nursing home. $240 a day is $10 an hour. $10 an hour is what I used to pay a teenager to watch my kids when they were little. And that teenager never had to know how to change a colostomy bag or, have to puree food for, well, depending on how small the kids were, maybe feed them baby food, but you get the idea. And this low reimbursement from Medicaid impacts on staff wages. So what can be done? Well, COVID has taught us one thing, that underfunding is a policy decision, right? I mean, every year we advocates have gone to our government and said, we need more money for home care. We need more money for daycare. We need more money for skilled nursing. And we've been told there is no money, there is no money, there is no money. But now the pandemic has made the government seem like Oprah Winfrey. Look under your chair, there's a stimulus for you, there's a stimulus for you. There's a forgivable loan for you. We here in this country would rather fund the military, even give them more than what they ask for, rather than fund education or healthcare or childcare or elder care. So I'm concerned, and I know you are too, if 145,000 deaths isn't enough, doesn't create enough to create change, what will? This is the opportunity, everyone, to reimagine, reinvent, and transform the long-term care system, all of it, including nursing homes. So we're going to focus on staffing, on recruitment and retention, mainly of CNAs, but this could be attributed to others as well. for recruitment, which is really increasing the workforce. Of course, we're going to need Medicaid pass-throughs to increase salary. People need child care in order to enter this field. Many are single parents. They need tuition paid or forgiven. They need their graduations attended by elected public officials. We need to raise the esteem of the people in this field. For retention, to keep our workforce, we need career ladder options. We talked about how this is the front line of COVID, and on the war on COVID, this is the front line like the soldiers. Why not have some kind of benefit package similar to what we provide for military, with discounts for uniforms or childcare or tuition, and how to deal with burnout, education on how to deal with burnout. We'll always need some form of congregate care, but we have to get it right. We're talking about small house models, but at the very least, if we can't afford that, let's do private rooms, private bathrooms with access to fresh air, natural light. Our government would need to provide low interest forgivable loans in order for us to do this. How can we do it? I'm going to ask Emily if she would put a call to action in the chat. Jack and I are members of a group called the Live Oak Project for Elder Justice, and I invite you to read our call to action and to follow us on Facebook, and our website will be going public this week. I think that we could also work towards amending the Residents' Bill of Rights to include things like private rooms and familiar caregivers, so there's not the constant turnover that we have now. These are the ways that we're going to have to do this. So with that, I know that we're running a bit short on time. We want to leave time for questions.
No, we have some time.
We're good. Okay, well, let me just add one thing then. There's been talk about the staffing mandates. And I, for one, I think it's flawed policy. And here's why. I think, first of all, we're looking at here in New York 3.5 and Rhode Island 3.58. I know the goal is 4.1. It's based on a 20-year-old study. And I think, as someone who's worked around nursing homes for 40 years, that one of the biggest problems is that it's a very institutional medical model. And I think when you mandate nursing staff, it just reinforces that medical model. I'm afraid that what's going to backfire is that some providers are going to increase on the medical side and decrease on the psychosocial aspects, social workers, activity folks who are just as essential to a person's overall well-being. And I'm concerned about that. And I personally think that if nurses were allowed to do nursing and not spend more than half of their time doing compliance with regulations, I think we'd probably have enough nurses to do the job. Not during a staffing shortage per se, but I'm afraid that the staffing mandate is just flawed policy that is going to backfire at some point. It's not going to create what we need to create. The Live Oak Project will help us get there. Thank you, Jack.
You're always fantastic. I just want to say thank you for all these really awesome presentations. I've in a separate email, I've just asked all of you to provide a copy of your presentations so that we may be able to find ways to distribute them, because what we've talked about, I don't know if what we're talking about is unique, but certainly requires the attention of about 8 million people in the state of New York, and maybe about 330 million people in the country. These are not just the issues of a small constituency of people in long-term care facilities. This is about every single one of us on the call. This is about not only ourselves, but those who we love and those who we don't love. I just want to say thank you very much for these powerful presentations. And it's also timely in the time of COVID. And this is love in the time of COVID. I'd like to open the floor up to people who may have some questions. May feel free to talk, and please say something, because I know that everybody's brain is going. Who might have a question? Oh, silence is not an option. Silence is not an option.
It looks like Amy Brown has an announcement. Amy, do you want to mention? She put in the chat that there will be another webinar coming up. Oh, here she is.
Sure. Hey, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to hijack the presentation. I just wanted to put in the chat if people are interested. Said that I work in the long-term care ombudsman's office in the state of New Jersey. I don't live in New York City, but this presentation has been really wonderful. We're hosting next Tuesday a presentation about nursing home profitability and financial disclosures, and how nursing home, the current regime of nursing home disclosures impacts resident care. So if anybody's interested in that issue, you can definitely join us next Tuesday, and the link is there.
And how can we work together with you for whatever the issue may be in New Jersey and elsewhere? And actually, New Jersey and New York, no doubt, have a lot in common.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the policy stuff is similar. A lot of the initiatives that are happening, the legislation that's being contemplated. So we're happy to reach out anytime, and just thank you so much for inviting us and including us in your invitation.
It's our honor. I also wanted to, on the call, I just recently learned that Assembly Member Stefani Zinnerin is on the call. Don't want to put you on the spot, but we want to be able to work with you on these really critical issues. I know that you weren't able to join us earlier. If you can also just say a couple of words, we would be honored to have that.
Well, I'm honored to join you. My chief of staff has been on the call for the duration, so I look forward to the briefing. I am about to go into session. Actually, we're in session. We're just waiting to start. But I just wanted to pop in to just tell you just how important your advocacy and your work in this area is. I mean, you've, I'm sure, gone over all of the statistics in terms of where we are right now, and we really need to all band together to put forth the best policies and to ensure that we can fund the cures, make sure that our staff is safe, our residents are safe, and those who come to visit as well. But we know that there's been historic underinvestment, and we need to do something different this year. And so certainly the Aging Committee is committed to working with you to do this work. And I'm just happy that you all have not taken your foot off the gas, and we're moving full-fledged ahead into this legislative session.
Thank you so much. And we can't wait to be able to put some pressure on you.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I have a bill, so I hope that you will put some pressure on that bill to get passed as well. So we'll talk about that. We'll set something up. But
Beautiful.
You guys have a great rest of the day, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All righty.
Now, who else wants to, I'm going to call on someone. Kathy Encino, can you please make a comment about particularly what Rick was saying in terms of the vital nature of the social supports?
As always, Rick's presentation was extraordinary, and it's good to see you again, Rick.
It's good to see you, Kathy. I'm a big fan of Kathy.
Yeah, well, it's a mutual admiration society. But the issues facing elders throughout the United States are so enormous. And unless we get it right now, middle-aged and younger people, when they reach old age, and it happens in the blink of an eye, they will be facing even more dire choices than we have now. So I very much support what the presenters have said today. Very important work. My work through the years was very closely allied with the direct care workforce and their relationships with residents. And so at some point, if there's ever that opportunity, I'd love to show what's possible. And it doesn't cost more to do it right. It doesn't cost more to have residents really be the cornerstone in long-term care and the staff closest to them. So, but that will take a longer presentation, and I'd be very eager to do that at some point. But what a terrific panel today. And Jack, thanks for your leadership on this.
Thank you so much. And you always have something worthwhile to contribute.
Thank you.
Who else wants to make a contribution, and then we'll be able to close? Okay. I look forward to having people come work with us on a longer term basis. And these have been very almost painful presentations. And they just highlight the need for what we need to do. Will each of you help us help others?
Okay.
I want to say thank you to all of our panelists. They were really great. And looking forward to our continuing collaborations. Make sure that you join our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I believe we're also on TikTok. So for our social media presentation, our social media posts. And I want to say thank you to everybody who helped put this great event together. And that's it for the moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.